This is chemistry lesson 1.04, and we're going to do this one in two parts because it's going to be kind of a big one. It's also a very important topic. So the title is called Single Unit Conversion. And what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be working on converting, starting with one object and going to, or one unit or type of unit and going to something completely different. And we're going to do it in one complete long stretch. So for example, if I asked you to convert minutes, seconds to hours, you would take your number and you would multiply it by 60, and then you would multiply it by 60 again. But with unit conversion, this is also called dimensional analysis or unit analysis. We do it in one long problem. And often students will say, why do I have to do it this way when I can do these problems in my head? And the answer is you can do seconds to hours in your head, but you can't do moles of glucose to, or I'm sorry, grams of glucose to grams of methyl alcohol in your head. So this is a problem-solving strategy that's really important in chemistry. And so we're going to start off with these really easy basic problems that seem like it's silly because you can do it in your head, but we're using the simpleness of the problems to help you learn this process. And we're going to give this, we're going to talk about this in a step-by-step type format. So on this side, we have rules, and on this side, I have a sample problem. And so as I lay out the rules, we'll go through this sample problem. So the first rule, rule number one, do those in black, and I'll do each step in a different color, is what I call framing up the problem. If you've ever watched a house being built, you'll know that they put, after they build the foundation, so we're assuming that, you've got your foundation, they put a frame up around the house, and then they begin to build the house from the outside in. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. So when we frame up the problem, here's some tips. Sometimes, now in this instance, our sample problem is given that 1 inch equals 2 point, let's just 2. Given that 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters, convert 28 yards to centimeters. Now, in this problem, we don't have a question word. So often what I'll tell students to do is to look for the question word. This is kind of a straight up conversion where it says convert 28 yards to centimeters. So what you're going to do with the frame up is where you are going to, what you're solving for. So going to or solving for goes on the left. So in this case, I'm going to put an equal sign. I'm solving for centimeters. And what you're given, the given number or the given value goes on the right. Over the number 1. Why do we do that? Let me show it to you first. So if I take 28 yards, and I'm going to put that into fraction form. Now you know that 28 divided by 1 is 28. So this on the bottom does not have a unit. This is a placeholder. And that's why we call this single unit conversion, because we only have a unit in the top. We don't have a unit in the bottom. But what this is going to do is it's going to give you a reference point to look back to. So as you're solving these problems, you always know that you're starting here and you're going here. Okay, next step, next rule, you could call these rules or steps. Number 2 is to assemble your conversion factors. So we're given one conversion factor in the problem. We have that 1 inch is equal to 2.54 centimeters. So let's talk about conversion factors a little bit. So conversion factors are written as flippable fractions. So I can write this inches to centimeter conversion as 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters, or I could write that as 2.54 centimeters in 1 inch. And that's a very different situation than being a fraction. If this is a fraction, you'd have to take 1 divided by 2.54, which equals 0.3937, and then this would be 2.54 over 1. So these conversion factors aren't fractions, but we write them in fraction form with a top and a bottom. But don't get confused, they're not fractions. So obviously, that's not going to get me from yards to centimeters. So I'm going to need other conversion factors. Most of the time, I will supply you with any conversion factors you need, or with a table you can use to find your conversion factors. But sometimes I expect you to just know things. So this is going to get us in between centimeters and inches, but it doesn't get me to yards. So I have to find some way to get from yards to inches. Well, hopefully, just as a matter of course, you know that 1 yard, and sometimes people get stuck. So what do you do if you're stuck here? If you're stuck, just create a bank of any conversion factor you think might help you. So I'm going to start writing out all the conversion factors I can think of that have to do with the English system of measurement. So I know that I have 1 foot is 12 inches, and I'm going to flip that, of course. I'm going to write these out until you guys get comfortable with the fact that these aren't fractions. I'll write them out both ways. You don't have to do that, but if you're struggling, I recommend you kind of are as particular as you can be. I know that there are 3 feet in 1 yard. And let's say you were stuck and you just weren't, sure what to do. You might know that there's 5,200 and, oh shoot, is it 5,280 or 5,250? I'm going to take 5,200 some feet in 1 mile. I think it's 5,280. I'm just going to take a guess. And 1 mile is 5,280 feet. Now, are we going to use this one? No, but you were just brainstorming. You were trying to think of any conversion factor that had to do with English measurement that you could. Okay, so now you've got this whole big group of conversion factors that are going to help you get from point A to point B. All right, the next thing that you need to do is to insert your conversion factors. And you're going to do this so that the unit on the top of the first factor should be the same as the unit on the bottom of the second factor. In other words, I have yard on the top of this first factor. So the second factor that I'm going to write here, this is going to be my spot for my second factor, has to have yards on the bottom. So that tells me the only factor that I have here that could even work would be this one. Because here I have yards on the top, here I have yards on the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try that. I'm going to put in 3 feet over 1 yard. And then I need to put in my next factor. So that got me from yards to feet. And this is going to cancel out at the end. So my next factor, if this has feet on the top, the next factor has to have feet on the bottom. And I'm going to cross these off because I've used these. So the next factor, if I've got feet on the top, the only one here that's I've got 2 that have feet on the bottom. One has inches on the top, one has miles. Well, I'm going to centimeters. I'm going to something really small. So we're just going to toss this guy out. That's not really going to work for us. But this one will. if I have feet on the top, I want to do this one that has feet on the bottom. So it's going to be 12 inches over 1 foot. And we're done with that, so I'll cross that out. All right, so now I've gone from yards to inches. Now I need to get from inches to centimeters, and that's where anytime you're going from an English unit to a metric unit, you always have to have an English metric conversion factor. And that's what I have here. I have inches on the top, so I want to have inches on the bottom. And this tells me, and I'm going to put this one here, that I have 2.54 centimeters in 1 inch. Now, I would give you this one, but the other you may not have. You should just know that. All right, so the next step, and I'm out of room down here. Well, I could probably squeeze this guy in for 4. Is to cancel my units. And I'm going to go top to bottom. So here we go. Yards cancels, top and bottom. Feet cancels. Inches cancels. And my last unit standing is centimeters. Now, one of the reasons you framed up your problem is when you're done, the last unit here should match the unit you're solving for, and ours does. All right, so we're looking good so far. The last step is to multiply and divide. And in case you don't remember from algebra, you're going to multiply all the numbers across the top. So 28 times 3 times 12 times 2.54 is going to give you 2,560. And the bottom's a pretty easy one here. I've got 1 times 1 times 1 times 1. So that's over 1. So my answer is 2,560 centimeters in 28 yards. All right, in part 2, we're going to go through 2 more sample problems, and then you can work on the homework. All right, that's all for this one.